Well, hello, everybody. It is Melanie Mitro, the host of the Melanie Mitro Show, and we are in studio today doing a really exciting project. This marks the 1 year anniversary when my world blew up and I started all over again. And I thought that this would be the perfect time for me to take you on the journey as it actually unfolded and give you a front row seat behind the scenes look of really what happened. Because in all honesty, you have seen the highlight reel. And yes, I've shared a lot of things on social media, the ups and the downs and the challenges that I've gone through. But I actually want to take this time here today to unpack it, because my thought is that you're probably either going to go through a challenging time in your life, or maybe you're navigating one right now. And the one thing that I want to remind you, being on the other side of just a really huge life change, is that a lot of times the redirection that you're feeling is actually protection, and that sometimes doors are closing and you are asking yourself why, but it's actually because there are other opportunities that you would have never given the time of day unless a door had shut and forced you to go down a new path. So welcome to the show. I'm happy that you're here. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you just give me a little like and subscribe to my channel. This is a 2-part series. So this is part 1, and we will unpack part 2 in the next episode as well. And if you're listening to this on iTunes or Spotify, just make sure that you go over and subscribe to the show. And on iTunes, make sure you leave me a rating and review. Super simple. Just go to the show, scroll down to the bottom. You'll see a place where it says leave a rating and review. This helps other people just like yourself find the podcast so that I can share life lessons in building a direct sales business. All right, let's get into today. So part number 1, the first thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about this idea of a crumbling, or this instability, this sort of unshaky ground. And for many people, right, it doesn't happen overnight. Things don't just fall apart overnight. And as somebody that's been in the industry, in the direct sales industry for over a decade, I had grown and scaled a multi-million-dollar network marketing business with a company called Body. They were called Beachbody before they changed their name, and are now called Body. And I joined that company in 2011. And like many of you that listen to the show, you are an accidental entrepreneur like myself. I have an undergrad in psychology. I have a master's in special education. I, at that time, had 2 boys under the age of 3. I had just walked away from my corporate job, and I was really finding myself in this new role as mom. And I was struggling to find myself in this role as mom. And so I found myself online looking for ways to connect with other women, and also to navigate this postpartum life that I was going through. And that's how I found Beachbody. I was looking for a solution to lose the weight, to get back in shape. I found this online community of women, and it introduced me to this concept of eating clean. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that, it's really whole foods. It's eating things with 5 or less ingredients. It's about, always having a protein and a veggie and, a starchy carb. And it really taught me that diet and exercise didn't have to be punishment for the things that you ate. And over that time, I lost 30 pounds, and I decided that if I didn't know that there was another way to get healthy, I guarantee that there were thousands of people out there that didn't know either. And so back in the day, I started a blog called Committed to Getting Fit. It was on Blogger, if you remember those days of those early blogs. And so I started blogging 5-6 days a week, how to eat clean. What are some kid-friendly, husband-tested and approved recipes? And my blog started to take off. It started to take off on Facebook, and I started to really have this viral following. And I decided to partner with the company Beachbody and to start to help people through these online communities and connecting them to fitness solutions and nutrition programs. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It gave me a sense of purpose while being able to be home with my kids. And it also uncovered a gift for me, a gift in marketing, sales, leadership, and just dreaming big and going after what you want. And I really leaned in to the business opportunity. I saw the income potential and what other people that had gone before me were making. And I wanted to change our family's life. We were really struggling. We were living paycheck to paycheck. We were, at the end of the month, there was not a lot of breathing room left in the budget. And so I saw this opportunity as a way to create that flexibility and so that I could also stay home. And I fell in love with it. And I grew the top team in the organization. I can say with confidence that nobody will ever beat me in being the 4-time top coach, because the company unfortunately changed their compensation model. But that meant that year over year, I was growing leaders. I was duplicating in my downline. And this is really where my passion, not just for online marketing and wellness, came to light, but it's also where my passion for leadership came to light, because you don't grow something that big by accident. It was very strategic, very intentional, and I was committed to learning in the process. So there was a good 9-year stretch where my business was thriving. My business was growing. I had checked off every single box in terms of accolades and awards that you could achieve. And then I got to a point where I started to say, what's next? What's next? What's out there for me? What else can I do? And 8 years ago, I decided that I was going to start a consulting company. And I was going to help other women in the industry, whether it was through courses or coaching or private mentorships. And that became my new project. And I grew and scaled that with my business partner to a multi-million-dollar company. And everything was going well until all of a sudden it wasn't. And I noticed, and it wasn't big changes at first, it was kind of subtle changes. My direct sales company, I noticed that there were changes that were being made that I didn't quite feel aligned to. They weren't really in line with my core values, but I felt so committed to my team and the people. And I was so loyal to what that company had done for me as a young mom and early on in my career, that I was willing to accept the things that I didn't love in that season. And I noticed that my team was they were kind of starting to disband. Some of my core leaders were taking a step back. They were also starting other business ventures. And I just noticed that things became just a little more unsettled. And that was kind of the starting point. But I didn't pay too much attention to it because at the same time, I was busy building other things. I was diversifying my income. And for me, it wasn't necessarily that all of a sudden everything just stopped. It was kind of this slow leak of joy. And I started to feel like the team calls that I was running were beginning to feel forced. The events that I was doing were inauthentic. When I was recruiting to the opportunity, I was feeling conflicted because I wasn't necessarily in alignment with everything that was happening. And at the exact same time, I was asked to come back and serve on our advisory board for the company. And I was asked to come in because we were in this sort of pivotal time where we knew we needed to create the next wave of leadership. We also had an outdated compensation plan that needed to be updated. And so they asked myself and a handful of other seasoned leaders to come back in and sit on the board. And for a year and a half, we worked on changing the compensation plan. We worked on developing new leadership, and we worked really hard on creating this new vision and direction for the company. And I remember at the end of 2023, when we announced this new compensation plan, it felt like the biggest win. We were partnered with Brendan Burchard, who is one of the most incredible thought leaders in the personal development space. He was personally mentoring us and coaching us through this season of change. And I learned so many valuable skills, like how to navigate change, how to have the hard conversations, how to build camaraderie and paint the picture of vision, even when you're in the valley. And so even though things around me were a little unstable, things were really shaky, I was questioning, okay, what's going to happen next? I just had this belief that everything that I was navigating through was going to help me in the next season of my life. And so we announced this compensation plan change and everything went great. And about 4 months later, I started to notice again, things began to just unravel. And at the same exact time, I started to notice that in my other business, things began to shift. Things began to change. Visions that were aligned were starting to become separate. Dreams that we've had for the future were changing. And we even had a mentor and this one part in our business that encouraged my business partner and I that we needed to diversify, that direct sales as an industry was not going to be an industry that was going to be around for the long haul, and that we might need to start thinking about a plan B. And I remember taking that advice and thinking, that's interesting. I don't agree. And that was the first time that I started to go, I'm just not sure, right? I'm not sure if going outside of the industry altogether is where I feel called to lead and where I feel called to go. And I am the type of person that I always try to look at the glass half full. I always look at the silver lining. I always think of the positive. I always think that everything is figure outable. And I just really, for the first time, I was starting to kind of dig in my heels and say, I'm just not sure that I agree with that. And I had a really firm stance. And even though I was seeing the industry shift and change, and another reason why this mentor said this was also there were these network marketing companies that were changing their compensation model, right? So people were going from network marketing to affiliate models. And it wasn't just one company, but it was 2, 3, 4. And we were starting to see this trend. But what happened was you would see this trend, but nobody was proving to be successful in an affiliate space. And I could sort of see that writing. I'm like, I just don't believe that that is the way that this model is going to thrive, because network marketing is built off of community. It's built off of people building communities and leading their people. And if you change that model, it takes away the entire sales force. And so that was really the first time that I started to go, I just don't know. And that was the beginning of the transition of things really starting to change for me. And me really pushing back and saying, I believe in this industry. I believe in what I've created. And even though I know that the industry is changing, I don't believe that it's going away. I do believe that we need to evolve and we need to shift and we need to change the way we do business. But I don't believe that it is going to be a business that is not around a year or 2 years from now. So the biggest lesson in that whole part is there are going to be parts of your life where you just have a great run. You have a great run. For me, it was those 9, 10 years of building my first direct sales business. And just because it's a great run and then things take a turn and shift doesn't mean that all those wonderful things that happened in that first 9 years are null and void. I honor them. I'm grateful for everything that I learned in that season. But there became this stirring, this point where I could see that God was redirecting me ever so slightly. He was preparing me by partnering me with Brendan Burchard and putting me back on this council to serve during a hard time, because he was preparing me for what was about to happen next that completely changed my life. So here we are. We are about mid-summer of 2024, and I just started to feel this shift. And as I was launching courses and masterminds and mentorships, I just noticed that everything felt heavy. Everything started to feel forced. I noticed that my direct sales business was getting really, really quiet. And the more that I tried to move things along, the more I was just feeling that my energy was depleted. And I was really struggling with a lot of anxiety, a lot of discomfort, a lot of uncertainty about what was going on, and just these rumblings of, hey, what's going on with the industry? And I got invited to this network marketing weekend, and I was invited by one of the top industry leaders in the space. And I had no idea. I had never met her before. We knew each other from online, but I didn't know anybody else that was going. And at that time, when she extended the invite, I couldn't attend. I was actually hosting an event in the Pittsburgh area, but the event ended up getting moved. And so I messaged her back and I said, hey, by chance, is there any open spots? Because I have a change of plans and I'd really like to come to this weekend. And she was like, absolutely, we will make space for you. And I booked a flight. I booked a hotel room. I knew absolutely nobody that was there that weekend. And I got on an airplane on September the 27th, and I flew all the way out to California, Dana Point, California, to this network marketing mastermind weekend. And if you know me, you know my personality. I'm shy, I'm introverted. I choose to stay home over going out. Just big social situations intimidate me. I will do them. I will put myself in those situations, even though I don't love it. So for me to just say, I need to go to this weekend, I need to be there, book a flight, and just go. And I don't even remember being nervous about it. I was more excited than anything. It felt like, looking back, I was being pushed and guided in this direction. And so I show up at this event. First night that we're there, the kickoff evening is at one of the hosts' house. And we're all sitting around the room and we're introducing ourselves. And Sarah, who was one of the ladies that was hosting, was sharing her story, because just 45 days prior to that, her network marketing company had made the announcement that they were going affiliate. And if you're not familiar with the network marketing space, if you are a leader in the industry, that is devastating, because you have not only this large team, but you have this amazing customer base. And when they say we're going affiliate, they essentially are taking away your team, and they're taking away that opportunity to earn on your organization and to build the downline. And for many of us, like, that is the biggest part of our business. The retail is a piece of that, but the team building is the bread and butter. And for those of us that really love team building, that's what brings us the most joy. And so she was the number one in the company, the first distributor to enroll when that company started. So basically, she had built an empire. And I sat there listening to her share her story. And she talked about how she didn't have any bitterness. There was no resentment. She wasn't angry. She said, I feel so blessed and so grateful for this journey. And as she was talking, she was weaving her faith into leadership. And it was the first time I sort of found myself lean forward. I was like, I was pulled in, because I had never heard anybody talk about their faith and leadership in such an eloquent way. And it really moved me. Something within me it really hit me. And the next morning, before we started our work session for the day, I went up to her and I said, hey, Sarah, there's some stuff going on in my business right now. I said, I can feel that things are unstable. We just went through this compensation plan restructure. I just feel like people are scattering and splintering. And her and I stood there and we talked for 45 minutes about, here's what she did when things were starting to kind of take a downturn. These were the books that she read, the masterminds she did with her team. And it really, I took notes and I ordered the books, and I thought, okay, I messaged my team even while I was there. I was like, we're going to do this whole mastermind together. We're going to do a book club. I have all of these ideas. And the next morning, so Sunday morning, I am in my hotel room getting ready for our final day of this mastermind. And Sarah sends me a text message. So mind you, a day and a half, we've spent some time together. And Sarah says, hey, Melanie, I was praying over the group this morning. And as I was praying over the group, she's like, I had this really clear vision of a lighthouse. And she goes, so I looked up the biblical meaning of the lighthouse, and it is to stand on the hillside, to shine light into the darkness, and to lead people to safety during times of rough waters. And she said, you're a lighthouse in this industry. And it was like automatic tears, automatic. It was this visceral response. And we had met up that morning and we were walking. We had taken a hike over the beautiful hills of California, overlooking the ocean. I mean, it was just breathtaking. But the whole time we walked, I sobbed, cried the whole time. And at that time, our conversation was about, I love the industry. I love direct sales. I feel like it's getting a bad rap. I feel like people they don't believe in it. And I believe in it. It's changed my life. I believe that there are good people out there. It's a good way to make a living. And we just had this conversation about putting a flag in the ground and really standing firm on what this industry can do for other people, and that it is a great place to build a life and to build an income and to be able to have freedom and some flexibility with your finances and your time. And so we talked about all the ways that we could make an impact moving forward, or that I could make an impact moving forward. And that next, after we got done with the walk, I was like feeling really good about it. Knew that I was going to have some hard conversations because some of the other influences in my life really wanted to go in other directions, didn't want to just stay network marketing. And I wanted to. This was the flag that I wanted to plant in the ground, and I wanted to show other people what was possible here. And so as we're wrapping up the weekend, we all sit down together. And the other woman that was co-hosting, she said, I just want to pray over the group. And again, I am a Christian. I grew up Methodist. But over the last 5-6 years, I've really sort of done this in my faith. It's like every time somebody told me to go to church, I was like, no, don't tell me what to do. Every time somebody told me I should be in a Bible study, I was like, no, don't tell me what to do. It was like I was putting up these walls, and I wouldn't, even though I grew up going to Bible school and church camps and going to church every Sunday, it was like I was rejecting so much of my upbringing. And when Emily was praying over the group, she said, I feel like somebody in this room wants to have a relationship with God and is wanting to move closer. And I mean, like, if you ever have gone to a church where they're like, raise your hand if you want to accept Jesus Christ, I literally was like, raised my hand. I had this visceral response to, it's me. I'm that girl. I'm the one that's struggling. And it was just this moment for me in my life where everything shifted. It's where I really started to say, like, I'm craving this relationship that I've been holding at an arm's length. And I'm also feeling called to do something else. And so I get on an airplane feeling like, what just happened? I just had this complete out of body experience. I get on an airplane and I head back to Pittsburgh. And my business partner sends me a text message, and she was like, what happened to you this weekend? And I was like, what do you mean what happened to me? She's like, I could feel your energy. I could feel your energy from across the country. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah. She goes, it's so weird. I just feel like things are not going to be the same. And so she said at one point she went over to her bookshelf and she pulled a book off the shelf. And she's like, I opened it up and it was literally a story in the Bible. And the story in the Bible talked about two people who one went one way, one went the other way, and they both prospered. And she was like, I shut the book and I put it on the shelf and I didn't know what it meant, but I just feel like things are different. And it was so interesting because that night, that Sunday night, we had this long discussion about what our business was going to look like moving forward. One of us wanted to diversify and go outside of direct sales. The other one wanted to stay in the industry. And it was like this tears of like just getting it out, all the emotion on the table. And okay, what is next? And so the next day, September the 30th, we get up, we just go into our normal work day, and all of a sudden we get a message from our direct sales company, and it was called State of the Union. And they moved our call time from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., which was odd. And I remember sending a screenshot to Sarah and saying, I don't know what's going on, but this makes me really nervous. And at 5 o'clock, when they were meant to make the announcement of whatever this State of the Union was, the council, our advisory board was all on Zoom together because we were like, well, we're going to watch whatever this State of the Union is together. And they couldn't get the video to play. And we ended up getting the press release before we saw the video announcing that Beachbody was now going affiliate. So they were essentially changing their entire business model. And within the next 60 days, everything that we had built over the last 14 years was going to be gone. And I remember sitting there and just completely losing it, hyperventilating. I actually put my head between my knees. I can remember and Matt walking into my office. He was kind of like out of my line of sight, off camera, just kind of watching what was happening. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is it. Like everything is gone. What are we going to do? And it was like in that moment, even though my heart was beating out of my chest, it was like, I'm the lighthouse. I'm meant to be the lighthouse. I will build again. It was just as sure as could be, with conviction of I am not done here. I am meant to be a lighthouse in this space. So here we are. It is October 1st, and our world has just been blown up into a million pieces. And I remember thinking to myself, what's next? What's next? And I was watching the whole world, not the whole world, my tiny little group of people that I'm surrounded by on a daily basis just get on social media, and everybody just sort of bared their soul. People were upset. It became sort of this feeding frenzy of recruitment of, people going to different companies. And for me, I decided to take myself off social media. I decided to go really quiet. And during this time, there was about 7 days where I just went completely dark. And if I think back to those 7 days, that time in between, whenever we heard the news to when I decided that I was ready to share, I knew that a couple of things were for certain. I knew that number one, I wanted to build another network marketing business. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I wasn't done. I also knew that I didn't want to say anything until I felt ready. And in my industry, it's all about showing up consistently, right? And I would pride myself on saying I've shown up every single day. I've posted on social media for, 10 consecutive years. And that was something that I held on to. But I just knew in that moment, I really needed to get quiet. I needed to really pray over my next decision. I needed to not be influenced by what everybody else was doing on social media, where they were going, what they were saying, how they were handling it. And I needed to go inward. And during that time, I started to make some connections with people that I knew from the industry that were in the corporate world, and started to interview other network marketing companies. And there were companies that I knew for sure, nope, I'm never going to go there. I don't want to be a part of a startup, or these product suites is not something I could see myself being interested in. And even like certain companies, was leadership that I necessarily didn't align with and didn't want to be necessarily a part of. And so I started to make my short list of places that I wanted to go. And during that time, I didn't tell people I was going somewhere else. The only people that I really shared that with was my team, my current team. I pulled everybody together, and I knew that everybody was about to scatter. And it was sad. It was sad to know that everybody was going to start going their own separate ways. And I just very simply said to people, hey, I respect your decision. I respect if you want to move on, if you want to stay with the affiliate program, if you want to go to another company. And I just told people, I am going to go somewhere else. I feel very called to build in this space. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do next, but if you want to stay in the loop with what I'm doing, here's a way that we can stay connected. And so I started down this path of doing all of these interviews over the next week. And during that time, the hardest part was making sure that I didn't make a decision out of what everybody else was doing, or make a decision because I felt like I needed to hurry up and make a decision, or, that I was missing out if I didn't do it. And during that whole time, it was like, oh, you're missing out on people because you're not posting on social. You're missing out on people because you're not out there networking. And I just really gave myself this entire week. And I didn't really sit down and say, I'm going to give myself a week. I just was like, I don't know when I'm coming back, but I just took some time off. And during those 7 days, as I was figuring out what I wanted to do, one by one, people started to hop into my inbox. Hey, I heard you're going to go somewhere else. Where are you going? And I would say, I don't know yet. This is what I'm looking at. I can let you know. And they were like, we want to go where you're going. And one by one, people started to come to me and say, I heard you're thinking about this. If you do this, I want to go with you. And even though I wasn't out there screaming from the rooftops what I was doing or where I was going, I had created such a track record over the past 14 years in the industry, speaking on every stage at every company convention, at every leadership retreat, doing unpaid speaking opportunities for other companies, for other businesses. I was giving away all of my knowledge for free, whether it was through the podcast or it was through my YouTube channel or just my public social media. And I had built this trust and this culture in other people that when they thought about who do I want to build with that has systems, that has leadership, that has good values, and that has a clear vision, there were a lot of people that were like, it's Melanie. She's the one I want to build with. And so by the time I got through the interview process of all these different companies, and I settled on the one that I felt aligned to, that I felt was the right one, I had a group of people that were waiting for me to make the decision and ready to sign up with me. And I say that not to toot my own horn. I say that as a huge life lesson because you know how many people over the course of the past 14 years were like, you should get paid for doing that. You shouldn't do those things for free. I can't believe you're speaking on those stages and giving away all of your knowledge and you're not charging anything for it. And I look back and I think about one of my biggest core values is servant leadership. It is leading people without expecting anything in return. It is loving on people no matter what. It is just always knowing that when you give, you will always receive on the other end tenfold. And not that throughout the past 14 years, I thought about, oh, someday this is going to happen and I'm going to be blessed in return. It's just who I am. It is just me. I give unapologetically. That is just a part of my core values. So when the time came for my world to be shaken upside down, there were these people that had grown this trust and I had built a relationship with, and I had even kept in contact with over the years, even as our previous company, we started to move down different paths. And so because I was planting my flag in a certain business with a certain company, there were a lot of people that were like, I want to align myself to you. And I know that if I align myself to you, I am going to have the systems, the strategy, the leadership, and we're going to thrive. And so the biggest life lesson in all of that, as I look back during that time that I really made that decision was, it's okay to be quiet, to be still. That frantic energy doesn't make the best decisions. We make a lot of mistakes when we don't have certainty. And I'm always reminded of that. Anytime I make a hasty decision, I always can look back and go, oh, I knew in my gut that wasn't the right one, but I made it anyways. And so I just really made myself purposefully pause. And every day, one of the things I started to do was writing in my journal. And you can look back over the past year from, the beginning of 2024 all the way until the present day. I can see where I was wrestling. I can see where I was asking God for clarity. I can see where I was like, please close the doors to the things that I am not supposed to pursue. Please open the doors to the things I'm supposed to pursue. Tell me what's right. Show me the way. And by the time I got to the point of making that decision, there was no outside influence. It was me, my husband, and we made the decision based off of what we felt was the best decision for our family, the best decision that was most aligned for the way I wanted to build a business and where I felt like I could confidently bring other people in and they could thrive too. And that was how I made that decision. And so a lot of times we want to go where everybody else is going. We want to be in the know. We want to do what everybody else is doing. And this was just a season of life where I had to be super obedient and to be really quiet and listen to what the next step was going to be. And for me, as somebody who is a people pleaser, that's really hard to do. I want to do what people want me to do. I want to be the knight in shining armor to everybody. And I had to disappoint people along the way. I had to say, no, this isn't the direction I'm going down. I had to stand up for what I believed in. I had to say, this is not where I'm called to go, even though I love you. I love our friendship. I love this opportunity that we've built or we've worked together in the past. I had to stand up for what I felt like was the journey I was supposed to take next. And that was the hardest thing ever for me to have to do in that season of life. So here we are. We're at a pivotal moment where we're about to start the next chapter, a chapter that I had to boldly step into, scary at times, a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty. And for somebody that has anxiety, it was not a great time for me in my health, but here we are. It's been a year later and I'm excited to share it with you. So we're going to continue this discussion in part 2. I wanted to set the stage with you today of really sort of, what was the stirring? What was the shakeup? What sort of happened beforehand? Because so often on social media, it's like everything was going along great. And then boom, now here we are in a new business. And it was a process of the unraveling and the uncertainty and just feeling like something was happening. And so in part 2, we're going to continue on, and I'm going to walk you through the lessons and the learning that happened in the first year of starting something new. So I hope that in this episode, you've taken away a lot of learning lessons. You found comfort if maybe you're navigating through a tough season. And if you're listening to this today, just take a quick little screenshot, tag me on Instagram at Melanie Mitro. Drop me a little comment on YouTube if you're listening to this on YouTube, because I always love to hear your feedback and hear what your biggest takeaways are. So friends, come join me in part 2 of this series to hear how the story turns out.